meeting of the Mobility Working Group. So this is really exciting. This is our second meeting. Again, you saw me in a little screen at our last meeting, but I'm Jennifer Williamson, and I'm our Mobility Planning Manager here at Sandag, and I'm also the chair of this working group. So I want to welcome you all. Before, we do have quorum. Evelia already confirmed that, but you'll notice that I am not Councilmember Campillo, in case anybody was wondering. And unfortunately, he's unable to join the meeting today. So we are going to do something new, and we're going to elect a chair for this meeting. So I'd like to ask for volunteers to chair the meeting. And just know we do have somebody already in mind if nobody wants to volunteer. Mo? Mo!
That's who I was going to nominate, Mo. All right, Mo.
Well,
thank you.
Actually, Mo has been our CTAC Santac chair in the past, and so I thought just in order to keep my hair from falling out that it would be good to have somebody who knows what they're doing here. So we'll go ahead and, does somebody second that though? We need a
I'll second that.
Perfect. Okay then, so Evelia, can you go ahead and remind everybody how public comments work?
Yes. As noted on the cover page of today's meeting agenda, in addition to emailed comments, the public also may provide live comments during today's meeting. If you are a member of the public here in the room and would like to provide comments on an item, please submit a speaker slip to the clerk. If you are a member of the public joining us on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand during the item you'd like to comment on. The raise hand feature can be found on the Zoom toolbar. For those who are joining via computer or by entering *9, for those joining via telephone, the clerk will call on members of the public by name of those joining via computer and by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. For those joining via telephone, the instructions for providing live comments also are on the bottom of the cover page of today's meeting agenda, which can be accessed from the homepage of Sandag's website at www.sandag.org.
Okay, and before I pass it on to our chair real quickly, although our working group members have to be in person, we do allow comments from outside. So there can be virtual members of the public, in case you were wondering about the phone a friend option that we talked about here. So with that, I'm going to, one more rule. If you do need your parking validated, if you'll have your parking ticket ready, we'll come around and grab those from you and get those validated for you before the end of the meeting. And if for some reason we don't get those validated, make sure you check in on the 8th floor and get those validated. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our appointed chair here, and we'll get started.
Jennifer, I'm so sorry, but we do actually need to take a formal vote on the approval of the chair for this meeting.
Well, hey now. See, I knew I was going to blow this. So why don't we go ahead and commence that?
Evelia, you can go ahead and call the roll when you're ready.
So, is that on?
No, green.
City of Carlsbad,
Yes.
City of Chula Vista, William Valle, absent. Frank Rivera is absent. Eddie Flores. The City of Chula Vista is absent. City of Coronado.
Yes.
City of Del Mar.
Yes.
City of El Cajon.
Yes.
City of Encinitas. City of Encinitas is absent. City of Escondido.
Yes.
City of Imperial Beach. City of Imperial Beach is absent. City of La Mesa. City of La Mesa is absent. City of Lemon Grove. No, we don't have a member for City of Lemon Grove. City of National City. City of Oceanside.
Yes.
City of Poway. City of San Diego.
Yes.
City of San Marcos.
Yes.
City of Santee.
Yes.
City of Solana Beach.
Eligible to vote?
Yes, I guess, well, yes.
Okay, yes.
City of Vista.
Yes.
Thank you. County of San Diego.
Yes.
North County Transit.
Yes.
MTS. Port of San Diego.
Yes.
Airport Authority.
Airport, yes.
And the motion passes with those present. And there are absent members, which are City of, Chula Vista is here. Oh, just arrived.
Good morning.
City of Chula Vista.
Frank Rivera, Chula Vista. Yes.
Appointing our member as clerk or as the chair of today's meeting for the Mobility Working Group.
Well, good morning, and thank you for your votes. I appreciate that, and thank you, Jennifer, for unlike the what has happened, to give me a heads up earlier, because unlike the common belief, I'm not very polished on running meetings, so I need a lot of preparation, and I did some work last night. Thank you. This is our first in-person meeting. We hope that we can go through the agenda, and I promised Jennifer that we'll finish by 11 o'clock, hopefully sooner. And of course, we do have audience on Zoom, so we need to be mindful of that when we speak. We probably should introduce ourselves and let the audience know what agency we represent. With that in mind, we are going to move forward through the agenda items. I think the first item is public comments. Do we have any public comments, Avila? Any members of the Zoom attendees have any raised hands?
We don't have any raised hands for this item.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 2, which is the approval of the minutes for July 14. Those of you who participated knew that it was a combination joint hybrid meeting. We had Zoom and in-person attendees. May I have a motion to approve July 14 meeting?
I'll move.
Let the record know, Tom Frank from Carlsbad move second.
Joe Bride.
Joe Bright from City of Del Mar, second. So we're going to do a roll call vote, and maybe you can introduce yourself as we go through. City Clerk, please. I'm sorry, Villa, please.
City of Carlsbad,
Yes.
City of Chula Vista,
Frank Rivera, yes.
City of Coronado,
Jane Thornton, yes.
City of Del Mar,
Joe Bride, yes.
City of El Cajon,
Mario Sanchez, abstain.
City of Encinitas is absent. City of Coronado,
You already got my yes.
I'm sorry, I passed. City of Escondido,
Julie Procopio, yes.
City of Imperial Beach is absent. City of La Mesa is absent. City of Lemon Grove is vacant. City of National City absent. City of Oceanside,
Teal Cotter, yes.
City of Poway, absent. City of San Diego,
Alyssa Muto, yes.
North County Transit,
Lillian Doherty, yes.
MTS,
Beverly Neff, yes.
Port of San Diego,
Lisa Madsen, abstain.
Airport Authority,
Airport, yes.
and the motion passes with one abstention and 1, 2, 4.
We missed a handful of cities. I don't know if.
San
you're
San Marcos.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed City of San Marcos.
Okay, very good.
Stephanie Keller,
And
yes.
City of Santee.
Minji May, yes.
And County of San Diego,
And City of Solana Beach.
Solana Beach, yes.
City of Vista,
Sam Hassan and abstain.
County of San Diego,
Lynette Tessitore, yes.
and the motion passes with one abstention and with
And two.
There's 2 abstentions.
and two abstentions, and there are 2 absent cities.
Thank you, Avila.
You're welcome, thank
that.
you.
Great. So we're on item number 3, and before I turn it to Jennifer, I have a comment. I probably should have mentioned it at the public comment period. in an effort to avoid having a improvision in the absence of the chair, I thought I really asked Jennifer to look into the possibility of perhaps appointing a vice chair for this meeting. Maybe check with the legal counsel and or the board or whoever that really have the jurisdiction over us. My feeling is, any vice chair would do, but maybe a vice chair from this floor might be appropriate. I just want to get maybe a head nod or head shake for the group to see if it's an item that we should really consider for future agenda items. And I see a couple of head nods, and I think that's probably what we should do, just in case something else happens like that.
Yeah, if it's an option, I'll move to nominate Mo for that position.
Oh. Okay, that's a non-agendized item here. I don't know much, but I know that's not allowed. So what I'll do, though, is because this is a formal brownout working group, and there's a whole bunch of rules, as I'm sure you guys all know. So I'll take this back to our legal and figure out if we can do it from this group, or because it was appointed directly from our board of directors at Sandag, we may need to have another appointed person be our vice chair. So I'll do some research, and I'll bring it back to you guys for discussion.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Tom, for doing that. I didn't bring it up to grab powers in here, but I thought it's appropriate for us to have a plan B in case. I know council members are very busy and they may not be able to attend all of our meetings. So thank you, Jennifer, for that. So we're up onto item number 3, and Jennifer, can you take lead on that?
Yeah, so in the past, we've done kind of a Sandag updates, what's happening with Sandag, and we're going to get away from that because a lot of you will hear that at our board meetings and TC meetings, and we don't need to repeat the same information over and over. So what we're going to do from now on is staff updates, and these are going to be 2 to 3 minute short updates from our staff that just need to announce something to make you aware that won't be doing a full presentation. So with that, we have 3 updates today, and we'll start with Alex Estrella, who's going to update us on Next Gen 511.
Good morning. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Chair. Nice to see a lot of familiar faces back on the CTAC days. For those who don't know me, my name is Alex Estrella. I'm the Technology Planning Manager. And one of the items that I just want to provide a brief announcement or a brief update would be the development of our Cons of Operations for the next Travel Information System services. In fact, I think at a last meeting that was structured by way of the old CTAC Santec, we did come in and provide an update on that project. But for those that are not familiar, is that we started the development of a Cons of Operations, but when you start thinking of how you implement technology systems, we usually start with the Cons of Operations, and we try to do a fairly good job in obtaining stakeholder inputs, not just from the operators, but also from the public. The idea here is that in order for us to understand how we could improve the technology components, in this case it's travel information services, we try to attain as much input, either stakeholder outreach efforts or workshops. And so we'll want to announce that we're going to be coming back to this group and giving you a more detailed update on where we're at, but also want to announce that we have a series of workshops planned in this month, one specifically on the 27th. And I have my staff reaching out to key staff members, the old membership list, to make sure that you're in attendance. And the idea there is going to focus on attaining input on travel information services that will be benefit to the local agencies. So if you're interested right now, I'll follow up with Ashley and Jennifer and the team as a follow-up item to this, and I'll provide my contact information to attend that workshop. And we're also providing presentation to other working groups, but we do plan on coming back to this working group with more detailed information. With that, if you guys have any questions, but I just want to come in and provide that announcement.
Any questions for Alex? I don't see any. How about on
Oh, it looks like Alyssa might have one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Alyssa Muto, City of San Diego. So was trying to understand, do we need to let you know if we're interested, or will that be dispersed to all of the membership of the working group, the workshop information?
I'll work with Jennifer, Alyssa, only because some members might not know me here and have my contact information.
All right, well, thank you, Alex. We've got Josh Clark up next to give us an update on the AB 43 task force.
Hey everyone, our AB 43 Technical Task Force met this past Tuesday. We received an update from member Ed Alberto representing the city of Escondido, who recently submitted an ordinance to their city council. It cites AB 43's newly added CVC section 22358.8, which allowed them to, following engineering and traffic surveys, retain the previous posted speed limit on a number of streets instead of increasing those limits as would have been required prior to AB 43's passage. This ordinance was approved. You may recall this is the same CVC provision that generated a fair bit of news as LA DOT used it immediately last year on a number of their roadways following AB 43 being enacted to not continue the speed creep process of increasing speed limits following engineering and traffic surveys. Our task force also discussed and are tracking AB 1938, which is on the governor's desk for signature. This bill from AB 43 authors clarifies the intent of AB 43 by more explicitly stating in the CVC that the 5-mile-per-hour incremental reductions can be cumulative and up to 15 miles per hour lower than the 85th percentile speed following engineering and traffic surveys. Following this working group's approval at your last meeting, we sent the recommendation letter on reducing speed limits to Caltrans on July 21st ahead of the CTCDC meeting on August 4th. While they did not take action during that meeting, specifically on the CVC 22358.7 definitions that we provided recommendations for, they did summarily adopt AB 43 added CVC sections for incorporation in the California MUTCD. So back to the letter itself, we received a response from CTCDC Secretary Bular on our recommendations, effectively stating that he will review the letter and share it with staff that are handling those efforts on the statewide safety corridor definition and roadway segments adjacent to high concentration of ped and bike land use facility criteria. He wrote that he will provide a response as appropriate after reviewing the letter and discussing it with key staff. We've followed up since then and have been looped in with the staff working more closely on this section. We've been told they appreciate our patience, but we have not received the substantive response. We will follow up again well in advance of the next CTCDC meeting that is scheduled to take place Thursday, November 3rd. Obviously, that's before this group meets again. So based on what we learned from them, we'll be sure to convene our task force to discuss their response and any additional recommendations that we may want to provide and bring back to this group for further recommendations as CTCDC and mobility working group agendas and schedules allow. So this is a good opportunity to let you know we're open to having you or any of your colleagues join our half-hour bi-monthly task force meetings. Please reach out to Sandag staff contacts for the mobility working group to be involved. Thanks.
Okay, I'll be reading the minutes to understand that fully, Josh. So next
Can we
we'll
make
have
comments on the reports? Okay, great. So as you can see in the minutes, I supported AB 43, and I think it provides agencies needed flexibility to set their speed limits. With that, I'm very much a believer in making complete streets and implementing good road design based on scientific data. And so with that said, we know from decades of studies that changing a speed limit sign is not going to change driver behavior. So if that was the case, people would be going 25 in residential neighborhoods and we wouldn't need traffic calming programs. And we actually wouldn't even need this law, right? So if we posted a speed limit and people weren't speeding, we wouldn't need this law. So what I'm emphasizing is don't think that because of this new law that the streets will become safer. They'll become safer when a police officer is present and can actually issue a ticket, and the person then hopefully won't fight it in court. But I really encourage all the agencies to continue with good design to actually, if they want to lower the speed limits on their corridors, to actually have design projects that will change the driver characteristics of the roadway and do a good design. So thank you.
Excuse me, Jennifer, there was no public comment asked on the previous item. Okay. And for the record, we need to ask if anyone had any thing to say.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So last we have Sam Solis coming up here to talk about the REAP 2.0 survey.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Mobility Working Group members. My name is Sam Solis. I am a regional housing planner here at Sandag, and I'm really here just to provide context on the Regional Early Action Planning Grants of 2021, or better known as REAP 2.0. So Sandag is really positioned to receive $43 million within this coming year. And with that being said, REAP 2.0 really has four main focuses on infill development, reduce VMT, affirmatively further fair housing, and support the implementation of the regional plan and its sustainable community strategies. With that in mind, Sandag staff has been meeting with local planning directors, and housing program managers to really get their input and provide feedback to staff on how we can best develop and expand our housing acceleration program, but most importantly, our call for projects that will have two components on a capital that supports housing supportive infrastructure and planning dollars as well. In our meetings that we've been having with current staff, a lot of that discussion they have been providing great input, but transportation and public work folks have been coming up in that discussion. And with that being said, we really like to get input from this working group to really provide that input on how we can best gather your input and feedback and really translate that into our call for projects. Again, it's mostly for housing supportive infrastructure, for capital improvement projects, and for planning dollars that really have a nexus to those four main objectives. I will be providing the link to staff here to eventually send out to the working group, and we'd be more than happy to set up meetings with staff if they would like that as well. Thank you all for your time.
Great. Any questions for Sam? Amelia, any public questions?
No, there are no hands raised for public comment.
Great. So we'll send you out an email with some summary here of these items and links as they've been indicated that we will have them. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. We are on item number 4, which is a update on low sand realignment. Sandag staff Danny V is going to provide us an update for the corridor planning study. Danny?
All right, well, thanks for having me. Excuse me. I'm excited to be here at the Mobility Working Group. You guys are going to get a preview of what I'm going to be presenting tomorrow at the Sandag Board of Directors. And I'll just jump right into it. So this is just information item. We don't need any action from you, but we will be asking the board tomorrow for an action. So we'll advance the slide. This is a momentous time and day for the region and the state of California, as we're going to ask the board to accept $300 million in state funding to advance the realignment of the low sand corridor and ultimately move the tracks off the Del Mar Bluffs. I've personally been working on the low sand corridor for the past 16 years, and I've seen tremendous progress in double tracking and replacing old bridges. But this award is truly special. It's larger than any other single award that Sandag has received on the low sand corridor, and something that we should really celebrate. You've heard a lot about this in the news, and today I'm going to share where we are on the project right now and how we plan to move forward and use this $300 million. That state's investment makes this all possible and allows Sandag to move forward advancing the engineering and environmental work over these next 5 years. Furthermore, this funding positions Sandag to be extremely competitive in future federal infrastructure funds. We're going to be able to leverage this $300 million to maximize the amount we can get out of Washington to help fully fund this project. In fact, we're going to be reconvening the Low Sand Executive Task Force. This task force was instrumental in securing this $300 million in previous years. And the key focus of the Low Sand Executive Task Force going forward is to identify funding to complete the design and construction phases. We truly just have an opportunity in front of us, and I'm going to share that. So the tracks on Del Mar Bluffs is a real problem. It's existed since the railroad was initially built. In 1941, heavy rains caused a bluff collapse, resulting in the Great Train Wreck. And even as recently as last year, we had a century-old retaining wall fail and cause a bluff collapse, and that shut down the rail corridor for weeks. With rising sea levels, increasing rates of coastal erosion, and more frequent and severe storms associated with climate change is all exacerbating the problem. We've seen bluffs receding at 4 to 6 inches per year and have spent 20 plus years on short-term stabilization projects and emergency repairs. This vulnerable section is a threat to the long-term viability of our infrastructure and public safety. And the time is upon us to actually realize a long-term solution with a realignment of the corridor. The low sand corridor is critically important for our region. It stretches 351 miles from San Diego all the way to San Luis Obispo. It carries commuter, intercity, and freight trains, and is actually the nation's second busiest intercity rail corridor. Sandag is responsible for overseeing the long-term planning and managing construction of improvements along that 60 miles of the corridor within San Diego County. And since 2008, we've added 15.6 miles of double tracking, going from just under 50% double track to 75% double track today. We've invested in double tracking, in replacing old bridges, and stabilizing the bluffs. And now is the time and the opportunity to protect all those prior investments, eliminate a bottleneck, and build a safe and world-class railroad. Los Angeles Corridor is significant at regional and state and national level. It serves over 8 million passengers corridor-wide and over $1 billion in goods. Sandag, or the Los Angeles Corridor, is vitally important to the projected growth of goods movement at the Port of San Diego and at the international border. Freight trains and passenger trains keep car and truck trips off of our congested I-5 and I-15 highways. It's our only viable rail connection outside of our region. Furthermore, the Department of Defense has identified the Los Angeles Corridor within San Diego County as part of the strategic rail corridor network, which means it's vital to support military readiness at our region's military facilities. And with this realignment, we have an opportunity to reimagine the rail corridor, improving safety, capacity, and speed. Not only are we solving today's problems with the bluffs, but build something resilient and consistent with the Transit Leap vision in the 2021 regional plan. The San Diego Regional Rail Alignment Study is our current planning study. It's a corridor-wide in scope, and it identifies how we can move the corridor beyond a suburban-focused park and ride commuter rail to a real viable mobility option that is safer, faster, and more frequent than what we have today. One component of this planning study specifically focuses on realignment of the corridor, realignment alternatives within Del Mar and Miramar. And it's this initial planning work that has positioned Sandag to advance the realignment work in Del Mar. So just to recap where we've been, so in 2017, we first identified 5 initial alignments. And then when we started this current planning study in 2020, we refined those 5 alignments to meet the higher speed vision that's identified in the regional plan. Then in 2021, that's when we last presented an update to Sandag Board of Directors, sharing at that point, that's when we shared how we developed criteria and ranked these options, narrowing the alignments from 5 down to 2 based on several technical factors. All of this initial work shows that a tunnel is our best option to achieve the outputs of improved speed, capacity, safety, and resiliency. Now, since 2021, Sandag and our key partners along the railroad have been refining these 2 alignments based on engineering, construction, and operational considerations. We're also incorporating the initial stakeholder input to reduce those impacts to the community. We're continuing to engage with NCTD, MTS, BNSF, cities of Del Mar and San Diego, and other parties to help shape the study outcomes. We've spent a lot of time advancing a lot of the conceptual tunnel work, identifying what the general footprint, what the ventilation systems, the tunnel configuration, what these portals will look like. And this work is ongoing and is on pace to be complete by early 2023. We're also making a commitment to informing and engaging the public with opportunities to learn about the project and provide meaningful and relevant feedback. So starting this month, we're going to be kicking off an educational campaign to teach the public about tunneling, as well as to listen to and address concerns and address misinformation that's out there. And as this planning study is wrapped up, it's perfectly timed with the beginning of the next phase of work, which is the beginning of the environmental phase. So going forward, we also have an opportunity to envision what happens in the railroad right-of-way once the tracks are realigned. We'll be working with NCTD, Del Mar, and the public on what could become of the vacated land once the tracks are moved off the bluffs. And lastly, we'll continue to engage Sandag Board of Directors, policy committees, this working group, as we begin work on the next environmental phase. And there's going to be many well-defined decision points over the next few years. And that brings us into the timeline, project timeline. So our current phase right there, it's the planning and outreach phase. So as I mentioned, we're wrapping this work up by the end of this year and into early 2023. And that seamlessly transitions into the next phase, the preliminary engineering and environmental phase, starting in early 2023. This is fully funded and expected to be complete by 2026. And that allows us to begin final design in right-of-way. But although that phase of work is partially funded, we'll be continually looking for additional funds in the meantime to find funding to fully advance and complete the final design right-of-way phase, as well as construction. And if we're successful in finding that additional funding, that puts us on track to deliver this project by 2035. Going forward, this state funding allows us to fully commit to moving the project forward through the preliminary engineering and environmental clearance phase. Some of the initial work in early 2023 will be to advance the engineering technical studies and biological surveys that will ultimately help us understand and document the environmental impacts of the project. Sandag has been gearing up to deliver this project, and we're currently building our team of expert staff who've recently delivered the Midcoast Trolley project, and leveraging our consultant teams to bring in world-class expertise in tunnel design and construction to help us deliver this project. And lastly, I'd just like to reiterate how important this is to our region. It's truly a big win for Sandag, and I'm just very excited to stop kicking the can and get to work and making this project a reality. And that concludes. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Danny. Is there any questions for Danny? Minji?
Minji Macy, CNT. I'm just curious. So this $300 million you mentioned, that's just for engineering and environmental work?
So the 300 million is for the project development. So we've outlined a plan to spend to fully fund the preliminary engineering and environmental phase, as well as begin the final design phase and the right-of-way phase. It doesn't fully fund those phases, so we're going to need some more money to complete that. But at least over the next 5 years, we're going to be really busy completing the environmental work and starting the design and right-of-way.
So do you have an idea how much the construction will cost? I'm curious.
Yeah, so we're still working out the details, but it's within the range of $3 to $4 billion for the total need. Obviously, a lot of factors in there, but that's in the ballpark. That's okay. That's where it is.
No, that's cool, because I rode that train once to LA. It was very cool experience. But I'm curious, is the train fully funded or supported by the fare, or is that subsidized as well?
Yeah, so we've got 3 different trains, rail operators on the Los San corridor. Well, 4 technically, but the Amtrak Pacific Surfliner, which you would take to LA, that is fully state supported. So the state of California pays for the operations and subsidizes that. Now their fare box recovery is very high. It's pre-COVID, it was, I think, 75% in that range. The commuter rail, coaster, and Metrolink that runs in our region is supported by, obviously, NCTD and their operation budgets, and by Metrolink and their member agencies.
All right, thank you.
Please.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Oh, Alyssa Muto, City of San Diego. You mentioned that you were going to do some more information gathering about what to do with the corridor that you're going to relocate from.
Yep.
as part of this process, but what have you heard to date about that repurposing of the right-of-way? And what kinds of uses are you tentatively throwing around?
I mean, I think it can be anything. I think we don't know yet. We haven't explored it. At least the section in San Diego, Los Penasquitos Lagoon. I mean, there's alignment where one of the alignments is basically on the same right of way of where the existing tracks are, just raised up and double tracked. But if we choose a different alignment and we move it off the existing right of way, yeah, what could become of it? I mean, I've heard people say turn it into a bike path, or maybe just use it to help restore the lagoon. Just remove it and improve tidal flow and make it, really environmental, mitigation type thing. Yeah, I mean, it could be anything. It's really an exciting opportunity.
I think if I can just kind of present some perspective that I think coming from the city of San Diego and as the Director of Sustainability and Mobility is thinking about how we can reuse that space in a way that is both resilient and sustainable. So without the landscaping that would cause further erosion, but to provide those essential connections, regional connections for alternative modes that we really struggle to find land for and space for. Thank you.
Thank you also. Any other question?
For the new rail tracks that are going to be proposed, I understand the repurposing, and I think that's a great idea. But also, what about possibly in some of the areas, including bike trails and paths next to the new tracks as well, and putting that into place while you're trying to get all the right of way? Because that's always the hard part for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, obviously at Sandag, we've got a vision and a plan for a coastal rail trail, right, to link Oceanside to downtown San Diego on a protected bike facility. The tunnel section is not going to be big enough to accommodate bikes. We're going to make it as small as possible to fit the trains and accommodate all the safety requirements, but that's about it. But yeah, there's certainly opportunities for connecting, right? That vacated right away is linear, and maybe there's an opportunity there that evolves to something different. So appreciate it.
Tom.
Hi, Tom Frank, Transportation Director and City Engineer for City of Carlsbad. And what's the state's current, target schedule for opening the high-speed rail alignment to the east of this? And I believe one of the alignments looked like it was coming from towards I-15 south and then around Mira Mesa or the 56, then veering over towards the west. Can you give us the current target on that? And then also a follow-up question would be, what are the projected impacts to the demand for this rail corridor when high-speed alignment is completed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can speak to it a little bit. Obviously, this is the state and California High-Speed Rail Authority led project. It is long-term. The High-Speed Rail Authority has their business plan that outlays how they're going to deliver the high-speed rail project. San Diego is phase 2, and fortunately, it's on the maps for vision, but there's no dates associated with it. In our regional plan at Sandag, we assume that high-speed rail is going to come, but it's in the last year of our regional plan. It's 2050 is kind of what we're saying in San Diego, for lack of no direction from the state. In the meantime, the phase 1 of high-speed rail will connect Bay Area to LA and even as far down as Anaheim, and that aligns right on our Losan corridor. So at least at the completion of the phase 1 of high-speed rail, we'll have this feeder service that'll connect in directly into Anaheim from San Diego. And I think it's a benefit to our region to really invest and improve the speeds on the Losan corridor as it can feed into the state's phase 1 network of high-speed rail.
So theoretically, in the regional plan now, we have the low sand improvements being complete by 2035 and the high-speed alignment being complete by 2050, that's 15 years difference, right? So yeah, so that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see discussions about how much Transnet or local dollars should be put towards these important state projects, right? So that's good information. Thank you. Secondly, I know there's other weak links along the low sand corridor. There's one in Encinitas near Swami's. There's also significant low-lying areas along the northern border of San Diego and then into Orange County along the beach in San Clemente. Are there other current efforts underway to study those areas to determine how to address those weak links?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you're right. 2035 is our fully double track date, and so all of those weak links also need to be improved. And we've got lots of projects in various stages of development that's going to fully complete the double track by 2035. This Del Mar section takes a really long time. Obviously, it's a really big project, but those other ones, a little bit smaller in complexity and cost, and we're on track to do 100% double track in San Diego County by 2035. We are working with and advocating with our partners corridor-wide to fix those vulnerabilities. You're right, that San Clemente section right along the beach was recently shut down the rail corridor for weeks because of a landslide, and they had to do emergency repairs. That is something that we're pushing and advocating for. So we obviously need to maintain this rail connection and ensure that OCTA and our partners to the north are ensuring that section through San Clemente is resilient just as much as the improvements we're doing in San Diego.
Yeah. And then lastly, so in the regional plan, and we really support looking at higher speeds along this corridor. That would be great for commuter improvements. And so we're looking forward to teaming with Sandag and NCTD on our village trenching project. We're moving forward with that, and we got council support. So anything we can do to eliminate grade separations or to actually create grade separations is greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Any other questions from the floor? Someone over there, please.
Yep. Yeah, so I think it's really implementing the vision that is laid out in the 2021 regional plan. So we've got Transit Leap service that's supposed to be, more frequent and reliable and faster than any of our transit systems we have today. It also ties into the mobility hubs around each one of our station cities. So rather than just having a big parking lot, it's actually a whole services of flexible fleets and bikeways and micro mobility and all the bells and whistles, so that people aren't dependent on getting in their car to make any types of trips. Right now, historically, the coaster service has been great if you live in North County and are commuting to Sereno Valley and in downtown. But if you're doing something different, if you're in South County and you're trying to get to a job in Sereno Valley, it's a little bit difficult to do that. There's just not as many train options. And so with all this added capacity, these improved speeds, we're going to be making all types of trips along this corridor more viable with transit.
Avila, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, we have a hand raised. Corina Contreras. You can go ahead and speak, Corina Contreras.
Hi, My name's Karina Contreras, and I'm here in my capacity as Transportation Policy Advocate at Climate Action Campaign. I just want to say that this is a really exciting time. We're racing against the climate crisis, and we also have a very generous window of funding available thanks to the monies at the federal government level. And also at the state level. So seeing that this timeline to 2023, so that way we can have this realignment done by 2035 and everything can be double tracked to increase capacity, not only for passenger, but also for freight. It's critical that we move forward as quickly as possible and we capture as many grant dollars as possible. And I also want to applaud the conversation that's being had about increasing ATP if the realignment is successful and the current stretch that's not being utilized can be reimagined for safe cycling and pedestrian walking. So I just really want to thank this body for the information. And I look forward to the completion of the low sand realignment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Any other questions or comments from the audience or members?
There are no more hands raised for this item.
Thank you, Avila. And thank you, Danny. I appreciate the presentation. Obviously, it's an interesting subject, and we hope to hear from you again, hopefully soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We're on to the next item, item number 5. This is Transit Ordinance Amendment Working Plan and Mobility Groups Subcommittee. And we do have Ariana and Nadine Sandag staff to give us an update.
And very quickly, before we get started with this, if you'd like to use your iPad to follow along, if you go up to the left corner where it says Files and tap on that, the presentations as well as the agenda will be on there. So you do have that option if you'd rather look at this, or it's easier for you to look at this. I apologize. We'll get so good at this, I'll have no announcements in the future. So I'm sorry, Ariana, go ahead.
Best working group, yes. Good morning, Chair Samak and Mobility Working Group members. It's good to see everybody in person again. My name is Ariana Zerniden. I'm the Financial Programming Manager here at Sandag. I'm joined by Zara Sadakian, who's the Senior Financial Programming Analyst. Today's item is a follow-up to the presentation that we gave you at your July meeting, your first meeting. We ran through the potential ordinance amendments at that time, which are noted in your agenda packet today. At your July meeting, you discussed appointment of the membership for your subcommittee, your Mobility Working Group Subcommittee on the Transnet Ordinance Amendments. You had asked that we return because some of the members were not present at the time. So we wanted to make sure we gave everybody an opportunity to participate in that subcommittee. Attachment 3 to your report includes the membership listing as it stands today. We would like to request one additional member just to help round out the membership in terms of number of participants. So we'll remind you at the end. So hopefully somebody else will jump in. Also included in your packet is a draft work plan for the overall effort. And we also included the subcommittee's draft work plan, which is attachment 2. We're in the process of bringing on a facilitator, and the job of that facilitator will be to help the subcommittee with the discussions as we delve into the amendments, and we still anticipate subcommittee meetings to start this fall. I guess I'm doing this, huh? It's been a while. Let's see if I remember. Is it the right arrow? There we go. All righty, so you've seen the flow of funds chart. I'll just, cover it very high level this time. So off the top, the 3 first boxes at the top, We've got a set aside for administration. We've got a set aside for independent taxpayer oversight activities or ITALC activities, as well as your bicycle pedestrian neighborhood safety program. Then after the net annual revenues, we have a set aside for major corridor capital. You can see the smart growth, environmental mitigation program, local street and road, which you're all very familiar with, as well as the transit programs. And then, as we mentioned at your last meeting, the amendments that we are going to be focusing on are stemming from primarily three efforts that the ITALC and the board have conducted. So the triennial performance audits that the ITALC conducts, which had a number of audit recommendations for improvements to the program, which would be addressed through these ordinance amendments, as well as the comprehensive 10-year program review, which the board conducted a few years ago, which also had a set of considerations for improvements to the program, and then also the 2021 regional plan priorities. And here on this slide, we have an inventory of the major categories that we would be working on. In particular, this group would be working on the local street and road program changes, the smart growth or grant programs, the bike ped program, the transit ops sub-program, performance reporting, dig once, policies, and social equity. And there's a lot more detail referenced in your packet under the work plan attachment. And then you may recall this chart from prior meetings as well. So back in 2021, right, we made the rounds with you and the board, Transportation Committee, ITALC, et cetera, where we, highlighted the draft concepts that we would be addressing in terms of ordinance amendments. The board had asked us to come back and say, well, if we're going to be considering changes, we need to know, where we stand in terms of the funding available within each of these buckets. So what we provided at the time was this updated revenue forecast for each of the sub-programs within the Transnet program. And I just wanted to remind everyone of what the key takeaways at that time were. So if you look at column G on the bottom right-hand corner, there's a total amount of remaining Transnet across all programs of $6.4 billion. But we also have other funds that are available to the region that help complement the Transnet program. So that was a takeaway. We also heard that continued collaboration with our partners, which includes all of you, will be critical to maximizing the leveraging opportunities and bringing all of those much needed resources to the region so that we can keep the program going. And there was also acknowledgement that Transnet is meant to support and not fully fund all projects and programs that we're working on. So in terms of the timeline, it's, I think we shared this one before with you as well, but right now we are, we included that high-level work plan and the work plan for the subcommittee in your packet. We are in the middle of onboarding a facilitator to help facilitate discussions of the subcommittee and help refine the ordinance amendment work plan. Then as we move further into the fall, we'll be holding those regular subcommittee meetings. We'll be developing amendments with that group. And then moving into winter, we will be in a position to hopefully check back in with all of you here, as well as with the regional planning and transportation committees, the ITALC, the board. And then moving into spring, we anticipate having draft amendments, at least kind of like an overall idea of what those are going to look like before we then move into spring and summer, where the ITALC and board would consider adoption of any amendments that would be proposed. So that's it in terms of the presentation, very similar to what we shared last time. But again, you do have that membership listing as an attachment in your packet. So if there is one more member that would like to participate, we would be happy to have you. And then the mobility working group is going to be asked to appoint the members today to that mobility working group subcommittee on the Transnet ordinance amendments.
Thank you, Ariana. Very well done. One quick question before we go to the floor. Can you tell us a little bit more about this facilitator? Is that going to be a Sandag staffer or outside person?
It'll be an outside person. We're still working on that, and we'll have more to share probably at your next meeting.
Appreciate that. Thank you. So as you heard, there is a space for one more member. I highly recommend someone from maybe a smaller to mid jurisdiction, if it's available. It would be great. I personally volunteered for it, so I know I am committed. But it is something that it helps us all when we come back with our recommendations. So any interest, I know we're all very busy, but it would be interesting to see if anybody's interested.
A question, sorry.
Sam, well, I thought you volunteered.
Question first. What is the frequency of the meetings of the subcommittee?
At this point, I think we're anticipating maybe twice a month, maybe each meeting somewhere between an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at the most.
Is that online, like a Zoom meeting or Teams or something?
That's a good question. I think we will provide the option, just, it's not subject to Brown Act, so that means that we don't have to meet in person. And I think to the extent that we can facilitate that, to encourage attendance, I think we would want to do that.
Thank you.
I'm going to hold the floor for a couple of more seconds. Any interest to have the vacancy for one more space?
So if you're feeling shy right now, you can certainly reach out to me after the meeting, and we'll send out one final email, so prepare yourselves. If we don't get anybody, we can move forward with the 10-person subcommittee, so it's not the end of the world. We just want to give this opportunity because it is your dollars that we're, going to be adjusting here, so.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, I'll market the issue. So to me, this is the most important thing in regards to Transnet. So for your agencies, for your agency representatives, I think it's definitely something that you want to voice in if you have the opportunity. So I just wanted to share that.
I appreciate that, and I echo that, Tom. I really appreciate it. Ariane, I have a question for you. Most of us members have a alternate person for. Is it possible, or is it appropriate if, this is a long-term commitment, I recognize that, but periodically can alternate participate in those subcommittee meetings?
Yeah, I think that's the whole point. So if the primary member cannot, then the alternate would participate in their place, right? It's one or the other, not both, right?
Yeah, and I'm suggesting that primarily because most of us have other commitments. We will go back and brief our alternates and prep them for the future meetings. So please consider that. And frankly, I was hoping to get a nomination today, but get in touch with Jennifer if you think you can remotely participate. I highly recommend that.
Can we have a vote, though, on the appointment?
I'm sorry?
Can we do the vote on the appointment?
Well, I don't know if you have any. Oh, I'm
for the
sorry.
10
yes,
that
yes,
we do
yes.
have.
Let me see if Frank has a.
Yes, I'd like to, if you could consider Chula Vista, I'd like to be considered. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
You're already on it. It's the alternate.
Trying encouraging more.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that, but yes.
Mo?
Yes.
I don't know if I need to do this now, but I'd like to designate an alternate, if that's
Okay, yeah, that
possible.
would be
Is that
great.
something that needs to happen? Ed Alberto? Ed Alberto.
Alberto, okay. Great.
Is Ed your alternative on this committee?
Yes.
Perfect, okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Eric, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but this item was actually posted as information, so I'm not sure that we can take an action on it today.
Oh, but the report says appointment. The actual report says
The agenda
appointment.
itself said information, and that's how it was noticed to the public, so I think that I'm not sure that we're able to take an action.
Okay.
I'm going to call somebody from legal really quick. I just don't want it to be a situation where the action is not valid because of the Brown Act noticing. So let me just call legal really quick if you don't mind.
So can we basically have a quick maybe presentation for next meeting?
Yeah. Well, the meetings might start before your next meeting. I mean, potentially,
okay.
maybe
All
not.
right. Got it.
Maybe
Got it.
not, but I mean, we're aiming to start here soon. So
got it.
I don't think there's anything that would prevent us from doing that and then just maybe ratifying it at your October meeting,
I might
right?
do that,
So
just to get a
Francesca doesn't
clarification for
have
it.
to stress with calling
It
legal.
sounds like we do have the members already in the list. We can certainly add Julie's team in there. And then if you have to take a vote for it next week, we can come back and ratify.
Yeah, I think that would probably
I
work.
like to respect the attorney's recommendations.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Ariana. Appreciate that. Thank you, Nadine.
And if Francesca just stepped out to consult with our attorneys.
Okay, you wanna
This is
wait?
the phone a friend portion of our meeting today. So we can either go ahead and get started on the next item in the interest of time, and then come back if you're okay with that and vote on it. So why don't we go ahead and do that? And if you want to move ahead with the next item.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Before we move ahead, it needs to be for the record if there's any public comments, and there is no hands raised, but we need to announce it.
Okay, thank you. So Ariana, if you don't mind, please stay with us for a few more minutes. Appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you.
We're going to move on to the next item. That is item number 6, flexible fleet implementation. And we have Daniela Kochman to give us an update.
Good morning, everybody. We got a whole team up here. My name is Danielle Coachman. I'm the manager of strategic partnerships in the planning department, and I'm just going to kick things off and hand things over. So flexible fleets are one of the 5 big moves in our long-range regional plan. We have been working on implementing flexible fleets in a variety of different ways. But what are they? So we're looking at on-demand shared services, preferably electric, but getting there generally. And we've really seen a lot of these services take off in the last 5 to 10 years when technology has improved the reliability and convenience and really enabled mass adoption. We've seen private companies deploying ride-hailing like Uber and Lyft. We've also, witnessed and supported many of our jurisdictions exploring bike share, scooter share, neighborhood electric vehicle services. And so all these, different people that are at the table with these services and different models for service delivery have a lot of opportunities in that we're able to get more of these alternative services out on the street and available to people, which will allow us to reduce our need for car ownership to be able to lead a convenient life, with new travel options at the table. But there are also some challenges that, come across with that as well. There's increased competition for the curb space and safety concerns around conflicts at the curb. We see particularly with ride hailing, additional greenhouse gas emissions and VMT from some deadheading, idling, and circling. And so, as we look at deploying these types of services more broadly, what is Sandag's role in implementation? And, we have really had some type of role in different types of flexible fleet services for some time. We've worked with private and nonprofit transportation providers for over 30 years on specialized transportation services, providing grant resources and also technical support, and also working with our jurisdictions as they deploy different types of services as well, particularly in recent years. And we've also partnered with NCTD and Carlsbad on the Carlsbad Connector service a few years ago, which was a microtransit option, and learned a lot from that pilot as well. And so, with our vision for the future of these shared mobility flexible fleet services providing a viable travel option, our first step really to look at kind of the broad deployment was to develop a flexible fleet implementation strategic plan. And so Eva's gonna talk to you about that project. We're getting name tags. And then, as we continue to support deployment, Marissa will talk about the flexible fleet task force that we're getting ready to kick off.
Thank you, Danielle, and good morning, everyone. My name is Eva Sanchez. I'm a mobility planner here at Sandag, leading the Flexible Fleet Strategic Plan. So as Danielle mentioned, flexible fleets is really, one of the 5 big moves, and it encompasses a range of different flexible fleet types, as she mentioned. So ranging from the smaller micromobility devices to the larger flexible fleet services like rideshare, microtransit, and car share. As she mentioned, we've seen some challenges with some of the flexible fleet services that are already operating in the region. And so the Flexible Fleets Strategic Plan is our opportunity to be strategic with our approach and ensure the services that we're investing in are helping Sandag and our partner agencies to meet our regional transportation, equity, and climate goals. So we started this process by setting goals and objectives for flexible fleet services, such as reducing vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. We established an evaluation criteria using both quantitative and qualitative data to recommend some initial pilot opportunity areas across the region, which I'll discuss in the next couple of slides. We then developed what we call use cases, which demonstrate how flexible fleets can operate to serve different users and different transportation needs, while identifying implementation strategies that will help Sandag and our potential partners in developing pilot operations plans. And then finally, we have some federal funding allocated to test out some initial pilots. So the strategic plan will serve as a framework for selecting pilots in collaboration with the Flexible Fleets Task Force that we'll discuss later in the presentation. We conducted case study research and engaged the private sector to understand the optimal environments and characteristics that are suitable for flexible fleets. And we were able to use this information to inform an evaluation criteria to identify areas with a high demand for flexible fleet services. And while it's important to look at the data, we also wanted to hear from our stakeholders and from community members. Advancing social equity was one of our main goals in this strategic plan process and a goal for our pilots. So we engaged our network of community-based organizations to collect their feedback and help us inform equity considerations as part of these projects. We also engaged stakeholders like MTS and NCTD, conducted interviews with local jurisdictions to understand how flexible fleets could benefit their communities and be integrated with transit. Through these meetings, workshops, and surveys, we were able to capture more qualitative information on how flexible fleet services can be deployed to serve a range of different travel needs. So based on the data that we looked at and the feedback that we heard from our stakeholder discussions, we realized that there were some common themes for the transportation needs in our region and how flexible fleets can address those needs. Flexible fleets are needed to provide connections to and from transit. They're needed to provide point-to-point trips working in conjunction with transit or maybe in areas where transit access is lacking. And there's also some areas in the region where transit hasn't been performing as well, and areas that are more challenging to serve with fixed route transit. And these are primarily in our less dense areas like our rural communities that could use more on-demand services to connect to our greater mobility hub network. So overall, these are some of the high-level use cases that we considered when developing the evaluation criteria and developing our final set of use cases. So as I mentioned, we developed an evaluation criteria to identify areas in the region with high demand for flexible fleet services. So in this analysis, we looked at areas with high population and employment densities. We looked at social equity data to identify areas with high concentrations of low income, senior, minority, and zero vehicle household concentrations in the region. We also looked at travel data to identify areas with high concentration of short trips. For our transit access use case, we looked at areas near high frequency transit, and then we also looked at areas with limited transit. And just want to mention that we didn't look at all of these metrics together because some of them would cancel each other out, but instead we used a different combination of these criteria based on the use cases that I mentioned in the previous slide. And so we pulled the highest scoring locations and ranked them into tier 1 and tier 2 locations. Tier 1 being the highest scoring locations based on the evaluation criteria analysis. And then as part of the scope of work, our consultant was tasked with developing pilot use cases for 6 areas. So we worked with our project development team to select those 6 areas, not just by picking the highest scoring 6, but by assessing other factors like aligning with our CBO and stakeholder needs and feedback, distributing the pilot areas geographically across the region, reviewing existing mobility in the area, and assessing infrastructure, new or near-term developments that could benefit from flexible fleet services. So the density and the travel data that we looked at in the evaluation criteria were really applicable to all flexible fleet service types in identifying areas with high demand for operations, but we leveraged our research that we have on flexible fleet services, our case study research, and conducting interviews with the private sector to hone in on each of these areas and recommend 2 types of flexible fleet categories that could be a good fit based on the service boundary size and just taking a closer look at the demographic data and trip patterns. So I'm not going to go through each of the use cases that were recommended as part of this strategic plan, but just want to provide one example and walk you through one of the case study locations, which is Escondido. This is really where we start to layer in all of the data. So we looked at the travel patterns in the community, and we looked at the demographic data, existing conditions. We layered in the needs from the community groups and from our discussions with the transit agencies and local cities to identify flexible fleet services that could improve the community. So here in Escondido, there are several east-west bus routes that feed into the Escondido transit station. So we recommended a micro-transit service to provide connections in the residential and commercial pockets north and south of the service boundary. Complementary to the micro-transit service, we would also recommend micromobility in the downtown area where there's topography that could support micromobility and leverage some of the existing transportation facilities in the area. Escondido is also one of our gateway mobility hubs in the regional plan. So we saw this area as a good opportunity to test out one of our gateway connectors. Right now, there's a bus route going all the way to Pala Casino. And so we saw that as an opportunity to test a more on-demand microtransit or a rideshare service that could potentially replace the service. And this is also one of the routes that NCTD is looking at as part of their multimodal strategic plan. So this is just an example of one of the use cases that will be in the final strategic plan, which we're completing by the end of this month. And with that, I'll hand it over to Marissa, who will talk about some other next steps that we're taking to implement these pilots.
Thanks, Eva, and good morning, everyone. I'm Marissa Mangan, a mobility planner here at Sandag. Give me the clicker. One of the other ways we're helping to support the deployment of flexible fleet services in the region was to competitively procure a whole bench of providers that Sandag and our local cities, even our transit agencies, could tap into for their pilots over the next several years. So while the implementation strategic plan was being developed, we had released an RFP earlier this year across 8 different flexible fleet categories, everything from micromobility services that could be docked or dockless to microtransit to car share and everything in between. And we scoped the RFP so that we would put it on the providers to help either us or our local cities or transit agencies to fully plan and design a flexible fleet pilot service and then deploy that service with whatever supporting technology was required. I feel like I'm hearing an echo. Is everyone hearing me okay? Okay. it's just me. We built up to $25 million of capacity over the next 5 years. Sandag has just under $5 million initially that we were fortunate to receive as federal dollars to kickstart this process. That includes funding the strategic plan, some of our staff time to develop that and put out this RFP, and the remaining funds to fund between 2 to 4 pilots in the region. So as part of that RFP process, we did receive 10 proposals, and we recommended 5 for a contract award. We've been negotiating with the various providers, and we expect to execute contracts with each of them by end of October, early November. We know there's a couple of cities, especially in the region, that are really anxious to get started and leverage that bench. We can go to the next slide. And here's the table that shows the providers by category that have been selected. We'll be executing those contracts soon. We have Lyft for both dockless and docked micromobility categories, Via for the microtransit service, and that's for shuttle services, on-demand shuttles for kind of larger vehicles, 10 to 15 passengers, Circuit for the smaller 6-passenger neighborhood electric vehicle shuttles, or NEVs as we like to call them. Those are really hot right now in the region with a lot of cities, both in North County, Central and South Bay, having NEVs already, and we're looking forward to seeing more in those mobility hub areas that we've identified in the regional plan. We have Lyft for ride-hail service and Get Around, a peer-to-peer car share service. We were not able to fill our moped scooter share category or our ride share kind of on-demand carpool, next-gen van pool type of category. And so we'll determine whether we recompete those categories. That's one of the topics that our newly formed Flexible Fleet Task Force will discuss. We're meeting with them next week. We've had 5 cities, Carlsbad, Chula Vista, the County of San Diego, City of San Diego, Coronado, and our advisory participant FACT graciously decide to volunteer their time to participate on the task force that'll meet every couple of months so that we, similar to the AB 43 task force, can report back to this mobility working group on things we've discussed. And we'll use that task force to really take a deeper dive into a lot of flexible fleet topics. It'll provide us an opportunity to really bridge us between that strategic plan Eva described and pilot implementation. And our first meeting next week is going to dig deeper into the strategic plan details to figure out where are those initial pilots that we would like to fund with some of those federal dollars that Sandag has, while identifying other opportunities in the region for pilot projects that cities may be interested in. It's going to be an opportunity for us to hear from local cities that we may invite to the task force to talk about what kinds of pilots they're planning. We would have some peer cities appear and talk about some of their experience with pilots, kind of mimic what we were doing pre-COVID with a regional micromobility coordination group we were holding, but now we have many more fleet categories to discuss and get excited about. So that's kind of the gist of where we are with flexible fleets, the plan, our RFP, and the task force, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Marissa, Eva, and Danelle. Appreciate the presentation. Any questions for the team? Tom?
I have a question and some comments. Tom Frank, Transportation Director and City Engineer, City of Carlsbad. And so I've talked to staff quite a bit about this program, and our city is really excited about flexible fleet opportunities. Starting off with a comment and a landscape like we have in San Diego County, which is a lot of suburban areas, and we don't have high density land use areas with the exception of downtown San Diego, but we're not like Singapore. So we don't really lend ourselves to a lot of fixed route type of transit opportunities. Where we see a lot of success with like the Blue Line and Purple Line. And so we do obviously have successful programs here. But with the flexible fleet opportunities, that can really serve a lot of our outlying agencies well. I would like to, I'm on the working group, so I look forward to exploring further opportunities within our city. Staff has experienced at launching rideshare programs. When I worked with San Clemente, there's a very successful rideshare program, which we launched up there called SC Rides with Lyft. It's been operating for 5 years, very successful. We're looking at all categories 5, 6, and 7, and we're bringing to City Council a new program, a fee program, multimodal transportation impact fee program. And in that, we're going to be studying flexible fleet options as one of those programs. So look forward to the working group and really excited about this program. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Other comments, questions?
Yeah, Sam Hassan in City Vista. My question is about the contracts with the service providers. Is there a cost to the users of these programs, or is it just fully subsidized by Sandag?
The pilots that Sandag will initially fund, we anticipate will be fully subsidized, but we can set up the contract any way you want for the pilot. So in the future, if there's, for example, a neighborhood electric vehicle shuttle that's going to charge a fare of $1 or $2, that can be built into the pilot service design. So each individual task order for each pilot will determine, the service design and requirements, including kind of funding and if there's going to be a fare to help with, revenue generation or.
And is that going to be looked at as part of the pilots, that if that is needed to have the fees, or is it, based on available funding for the future?
For the future, so the future funding is dependent on what new funding Sandag gets or cities kind of bring to the table. We have a few $1 million initially to deploy a handful of pilots. We expect them to be kind of fully subsidized, but it's going to depend on the number, the type of pilot. We'll discuss initially at the task force and bring those recommendations to the mobility working group in November, so that early next year in 2023, we can get started with planning and deploying those pilots. So TBD.
Thank you.
The goal is really to, deploy the most pilots we can, test the most use cases, and get the most service out on the street as possible. And, there's obviously limited resources, and we're going to be looking to, other state and federal programs to try to, add to that. And then hopefully, partnering with cities, other providers, private sector, and, really looking for a variety of opportunities to see how we can make these services work to improve transportation options in our region.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was going to ask a question, and I'm certainly coming back to you. Can I ask you to go to slide number 4, please? I'm sorry, number 9. Slide number 9. So, from a very, very high level point of view, I was wondering why any of the beach areas are not included in the recommended locations. As you probably know, summer months, beach areas are very, very crowded. It actually has a load on the local communities, and it sounds reasonable to have that area explored. And can you explain a little bit how this list has been developed?
We did include Imperial Beach, and so that's our one beach coastal community as part of these 6 use cases. And then as part of the tier 1 and tier 2, the other locations, there are some other coastal communities, but as I mentioned, when selecting these 6 use cases, we took a look at areas with existing mobility. And so some communities like Oceanside already have kind of like a summer shuttle NEV service. Other areas like Pacific Beach are already slated to get NEV operations in the near term. And so it was really like vetting through those coastal communities and taking a look at some of the existing mobility in the area.
Are you saying that, I recognize, I saw Imperial Beach, I know Carlsbad, for example, has a long beach as well, but beaches like La Jolla, Del Mar, they have certainly seasonal traffic, not only for fair, but horse races, and other beach communities where they're very dense, and it sounds like this program would fit very well. So is that an opportunity for the future to consider those locations?
Yeah, I think so. I think some of those communities maybe didn't pop up in the scan that we did because they didn't have as high as densities. But I think one of the goals with these initial pilots that we test out is to see how they operate in different communities and with different users and different transportation needs. And I think there's definitely an opportunity to learn from them and see how we can apply these types of services in other parts of our region.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me also mention that, of course, in our regional plan between now and 2050, we've identified those 30 different communities as regional mobility hub areas. Those are all prime areas for flexible fleet deployment between now and our horizon year. But the flexible fleet implementation strategic plan kind of hones in on those areas in the near term where flexible fleet pilots are truly going to thrive. And so consider it to be a subset of the Regional Mobility Hub network. And so those two-tiered areas that Eva mentioned is essentially that subset.
Okay, thank you. Please.
Lynette Tessitore, County of San Diego. So thank you. The county has really been looking forward to this opportunity for the strategic plan to come online. As you're well aware, the unincorporated communities are just outside of most mobility hubs, and we weren't included in there, including our Buena Creek Sprinter Station. So I don't see that that was a consideration here. Can you just talk about a bit, one of the criteria that you had looked at are those communities that don't have those alternate modes of transportation. And you had mentioned rural communities specifically, and I saw that there aren't any rural communities and there are some opportunities there too with down in the southern region as well in the eastern region for unincorporated communities to be included as part of the pilot study. So can you speak a little bit about that and the rural community connectivity? Thanks.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Buena Creek Station too, and as part of those other tier 1 and tier 2 locations, I think the goal too is to, as we're working with the cities to implement those pilots, is to look at the service boundaries and maybe expanding beyond the jurisdiction line to incorporate some of those areas. I didn't include a map here, but in the strategic plan, we have a whole section on this gateway concept, the gateway connector concept that we're looking at. And we identified a number of communities that didn't make it in the regional scan because of those employment and population densities. But we are seeing those as opportunities for potential on-demand services. They just didn't make it as part of these 6 recommendations that we selected as part of the project development team.
And then are these 6 proposals going forward to the board to be voted upon, or are they already decided?
We'll be taking those pilot recommendations for the fully subsidized pilots that Marissa was mentioning. We'll be taking those recommendations to this working group. As far as taking them to the board, I'm not sure yet if we'll need to get board approval. I'm sure we will, though.
Yeah, we can determine if that's a step that's needed. I mean, we have approval to have, we already had accepted and programmed those federal dollars between now and the next couple of fiscal years to use them for fleet pilots, and that should be sufficient, but we'll clarify.
And this was really a prioritization exercise. We, don't have enough funding to do 6 pilots, and, are also interested in exploring other pilots, with partners and funding availability, as new federal funds or state funds become available. So it'll be an ongoing discussion.
Thank you, Julie.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I appreciate it. We're very much interested at Escondido in deploying flexible fleets. And we're not currently listed as being a part of the task force. Is the task force membership open to other municipalities?
Yeah, we'd asked for volunteers at the last meeting. The only thing we need to be careful about with every other task force or subcommittee that's formed is the quorum factor. So we can check against the count. I think we still have space for another participant.
Okay.
So we'd love to have you join us
great.
if that's the case.
And you're also welcome to send anybody from your staff. If you personally don't come, then we don't have to worry about the quorum issue with this group, because you're a member of this group, but somebody else from Escondido.
Okay, yeah, we could certainly send somebody else for sure. Okay, yeah, we'd love to be a part of that. And am I understanding correctly then that you'll be looking at these potential pilot areas through this task force and developing, potentially the scope and the boundaries and that sort of thing with the group? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And, a lot of these cities too, they're not on the task force. So we'll definitely want to have conversations with the cities as well to make sure that, your city even supports these recommendations too.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, we need task force members to wear their objective hats because we're making decisions regarding funding for the region and go from there.
Thank you, Julie. Avila, do we have any questions from the audience?
We do not have any public comments or hands raised for this item.
Thank you.
Can I add one more thing before we wrap up? I just wanted to make sure with the flexible fleet procurement that people understood that we have the bench of providers and that you as jurisdictions, once we have contracts executed, Sandag does, you would be negotiating directly with those providers. So you don't go through Sandag to access those providers. If you want to use that procurement to pilot or deploy a service, you would be able to just skip the step of doing a competitive procurement because we've already basically done it on your behalf, and then would be able to enter into a contract directly with them.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I don't see any more comments. Thank you for your presentation. It was very helpful and informative. I appreciate that. We're going to move on to the, go back actually to the previous item. Ariana, can you please come back to the presentation table? And I think we have an opinion from the city, I'm sorry, I keep saying city, it's Sandag attorneys. So I think we can now vote for the nominated subcommittee members. Ariana, can you remind us who are the subcommittee nominations first, and then we can take a vote?
Yes, absolutely. So as primary members, we have William Valle from the city of Chula Vista, and the alternate would be Frank Rivera. From city of Carlsbad, we have Tom Frank, alternate Nathan Schmidt. From city of Escondido, Julie Procopio, alternate Ed Alberto. From city of San Diego, Jorge Riveros, and the alternate is Alisa Muto. From city of El Cajon, Mario Sanchez, no alternate. From city of Solana Beach, it's Mo Samak with Dan Goldberg as the alternate. From county of San Diego, Lynette Tesitore with Zubir Owada as the alternate. North County Transit District, Katie Persons, Lillian Doherty as the alternate. Metropolitan Transit System, Matt Marquez Beverly Neff as the alternate. And FACT, Facilitating Access to Coordinated Transportation, Arun Prem.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion
Oh,
to...
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I missed the alternate for FACT, Megan Schmidt.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Ariana. May I have a motion to approve the subcommittee members as read?
I'm sorry.
Joe Bride motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have Del Mar as approving the motion and Carlsbad second. So we need to do a vote count.
Chair, my apologies.
Okay, there's a comment, please.
So our alternate is retired or retiring very soon. So I'm not sure if, is the alternate, would that require a vote for us to have a different alternate? Or are we just voting on the primary?
Francesca, do you have the sense? I'm not sure if Peter's in the room still, but I actually don't have an answer for you on that, but we can get back to you.
Yeah, we'll get back to you. But let's take the vote since
Yeah,
he's
let's-
still employed.
Thank you.
Yeah. We will get back to you on that one. But my feeling is if you can approach Sandag with a separate name for your alternates, and they probably will consider that. So let's take the vote, Avila.
City of Carlsbad,
Yes.
City of Chula Vista,
Yes.
City of Coronado,
Yes.
City of Del Mar,
Yes.
thank you. City of El Cajon,
Yes.
City of Encinitas, City of Escondido,
Yes.
City of Oceanside,
Yes.
City of Poway, I'll skip, City of San Diego,
Yes.
City of San Marcos,
Yes.
City of Santee,
Yes.
City of Solana Beach,
Yes.
City of Vista,
Yes.
thank you. County of San Diego?
Yes.
Thank you. NCTD?
Yes.
Thank you. MTS?
Yes.
Port of San Diego?
Yes.
Thank you. Airport Authority?
Airport, yes.
Thank you. City of Encinitas is absent. City of Imperial Beach is absent. City of La Mesa is absent. City of Lemon Grove is absent. City of National City is absent. Back to City of Encinitas. Absent. No. And the motion passes. Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Forgive me. Go ahead.
And the motion passes with those present.
Thank you, Avila. Thank you, Ariana. Appreciate that. We now have established subcommittee. Perfect. Jennifer just reminded me that we may be short in time, so in favor of trying to get the meeting done faster, I'd like to postpone item 7, maybe to the back of the meeting. If you have time, we'll get to that. I apologize for Danielle about this sudden change on the agenda. So we were going to move to item number 8, which is a Cycle 6 California Active Transportation Program augmentation update. And Tracy Fershaw is going to give us an update on this one. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, let's see. Okay, so thank you, Chair. At your July meeting under Sandag and funding opportunities, I presented on the statewide ATP call for projects and the regional competition. Since then, there have been some changes in call for projects and additional funding that's made available to the region. And we wanted to kind of highlight this opportunity to, so I'd like to thank the chair and Jennifer for allowing some additional time on your agenda today to present this to you. Okay, and the slide is not advancing. There we go. Oops. Okay, there we go. I'll get a hang of this. Okay, so recognizing that this is a new and diversified group, I'd like to provide a brief overview of the grant program. And recognizing that most of the members are familiar with the program, I'll go through the first 3 slides rather quickly and focus on the regional component. So the Active Transportation Program was created by Senate Bill 99 and Assembly Bill 101 to encourage increased use of active modes of transportation, such as biking and walking. In 2017, the Road Repair and Accountability Act, Senate Bill 1, added approximately $100 million per year in additional funding for this program. The ATP is administered jointly by the California Transportation Commission, CTC, and Caltrans. Program funding is awarded in 2 stages, beginning at the statewide competition, led by Caltrans, followed by the regional competition, led by MPOs, led here at Sandag. So I'll move on to the next slide. Slide 3 provides the major components of the ATP call for projects, funding availability, minimum award, match, and project examples and expenditure deadline. Back in July, I reported that approximately 23.6 million would be available in the regional competition. That amount of funding has increased to 61.9. And so I just wanted to, I mean, this is an unprecedented amount of money coming to the region. So that's why I really wanted to come back here and highlight this to you. So you can go back to your city planners and really try to come up with, if you haven't already provided applications through the state, you have an opportunity here at the region to apply for additional projects so you can capture that money. So the increased funding is more than doubled. So it's about 38% more coming to the San Diego region. Okay. So this is the timeline for the statewide competition. And what I want to highlight here is in August, that's when the augmentation funding was voted on and made available. So this is the timeline for the regional call for projects. And what I want to highlight here, okay, so in July is when the regional call for projects was released. We have moved the application deadline due to this new funding to October 31st so that cities can have the opportunity to come up and submit additional projects if needed. And then in November 2022 to April 2023, the evaluation of regional applications will start. And I'll probably be coming back here to you under an announcement to hopefully tap some shoulders to have some evaluators as part of our committee. Next slide, let's see, we've got, next slide, the extended application period to October 31st, like I mentioned, but these are additional resources that you can use. The first one is linked, our Sandag website, 2023 Regional ATP Call for Projects that will give you guidelines, that also gives you information on how to apply through BidNet, applications and vendor information. And then we have the Sandag ATP website, a link there, and then also Caltrans ATP webpage, which has application and resources for you, for your city. And I also want to mention here that one of the changes, as well as the funding and the extension of the application deadline, we at Sandag are also providing application assistance for cities that might not be familiar with the use of BidNet, or might just want to have some additional eyes on the project and how it could be competitive. So we are offering application assistance, and that will be up until August. That will be up until October 17th. So from now until October 17th, if anyone would like to meet with the Sandag Grants Department to discuss their projects, or like I said, discuss how to use BidNet and get additional resources, just get in touch with me. I'll get my contact information will be on the last slide, as well as in the report itself. Just get in touch with me, and then I'll be glad to set that appointment up for you. So, so the good news is the statewide applications that you did submit from this region will be automatically enrolled in our Call for Projects regional competition. So these are the 25 applications we have received that were submitted through the state. You can see that there's 25 applications. But I also want to stress here that since there is a very large amount of money coming into the state competition as well as the regional, a lot of these, some of these projects that were submitted can be eliminated because of their funding from the state. So if you have a great project at your city, you can be on this list. So I really want to stress the need to really try to get as much money for your city as possible and submit those projects. So go to the next slide here. So again, I want to leave you, this is a real quick presentation. I want to leave you with the highlighted changes here. So again, we have 61.9 million now available at the region. And the application deadline, again, extended to October 31st. And your application assistance is available through potential applicants. Please, like I said, get in touch with me, and I'll be glad to make that appointment for you. And there's my contact information, so stay connected with Sandag. Myself, as well as my manager, Jenny Russo, will be happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate that. Any questions for Tracy? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Tracy. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding the kind of chronology. So we don't need to resubmit any of those 25 that you showed. Those don't need to be resubmitted.
Correct.
You will get information. We will all get information about the state selection October 22nd. Is that correct? So that, because I'm thinking if there was something funded, there might be something that's a follow-on that we may want to apply for. If it's not funded, then that.
Yeah, you certainly can submit another project if your previous submitted application was funded through the state competition. Yeah.
But will we know on October 22nd from the state that projects have fallen out of the regional competition?
It would be posted on those websites, especially you could use the Caltrans one as well as Sandag. And the CTC probably would have that on their website as well.
I'm trying to get down to the dates though. So October 22nd, so that gives us only about 9 days to make a decision. Is there any consideration by Sandag about giving just a little bit more time so that we can make really thoughtful decisions as a city or as a region on projects that we would want to submit once we know what the state competition has yielded?
Tracy, I think I understood the question. Let me make an attempt to address that. So what I understand is that you do not have to apply again for those 25. So we know about that. What Tracy mentioned is that it is possible that some of those 25 projects get selected by the state, in which case it would free up more projects eligible for awards. And that's why Tracy is recommending that go ahead and add more projects if you think you have a project eligible, but only to Sandag, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think we can submit to Caltrans, to state any longer because the deadline has passed. So we can certainly apply for Sandag, for the local money, to be considered by Sandag's team, the evaluation team, for a local award. So that's what I'm.
No, I do understand that. My question is, we all have a capacity workload limit.
Yes.
So if, for example, one of our jurisdiction projects was picked up by the state, I would want to look at something very different than putting all my eggs in that basket to carry it forward to the regional.
Yeah, I understood. Yes, and that's a great question. But I think so. What's holding us to the deadline is CTC. We have to have we have to have our applications
and everything done by a certain time. And I think that the CTC has dates that we have to accompany, but we can definitely try to see what, if that deadline can be extended. But if I will remember correctly, we are extending for the month, and that's what CTC allows us to do, given the timeframes of the evaluation, the awarding, and so forth. So, but like I said, I'll definitely look at that, and I can get back to you.
Yeah, any amount of time would be appreciated, but I understand too the deadlines.
And I could also suggest, like, even if you are thinking of a follow-on project, go ahead and you can submit that prior to knowing whether the first phase of your project will be funded.
Thank you, Tracy.
It is a lot of work to put together a grant application, so just being really mindful of our staff's time, the work, and just that investment of, and then hoping that one of those projects gets picked up.
Thank you. A lot of work is understatement, I agree. Let me see if there's any questions from the audience.
There are no hands raised on this item. Chair.
Great. We have like question for one more minute, if there's any. Frank, very quickly, please.
Chula Vista. So Tracy, all the projects that we submitted to the state, the 25, if let's say the state picks 5, then do we have to do anything more for the 20 that would then go to the regional? Those regional, the unsuccessful state-funded projects that the region submitted, is there anything else to do for Sandag?
If I'm understanding your question, I think you're saying that if the
We submitted 25 from the region up to the state.
Right.
The state funds some of them. The ones that are not funded by the state, Sandag already looks at those as part of the pool to rank
They are
against
already
any,
in our-
and then plus the ones that we have until October 31st to submit.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Frank, for clarification. Okay, I think that's it. Tracy, thank you very much. That's a very good news, and we appreciate the information. I'm sure you'll get contacted by some agencies.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. We are at the end of our meeting, and unfortunately, we don't have time for item number 7. So I'm going to ask Jennifer to put it back on the agenda for the next meeting. And our next meeting is November 10th. And please look for your announcements and meeting notes.
Yeah, and if I can add, I don't think we collected any of your parking tags. So upstairs with our receptionist on the 8th floor, you can get that validated for anybody that needs to. So I guess the issue is you have to check out formally now, so it's really not going to happen here. Thank you. And if I can just say thank you to everybody for putting up with us. This is our second meeting, our first in-person meeting in quite a while. So I'm sure it'll go much smoother as we continue. Anyway, appreciate it. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.